Hi, and welcome back to Just Ask the Question. I am your host, Brian Karam. With me today, Waj Ali. Waj, a good friend and a hell of an activist, but also the host of Left Hook, his podcast, and his stuff on Substack. Waj, thanks for joining us, man. I appreciate it.
Thank you, Brian. You look shell shocked after having to endure the verbal diarrhea that is Donald Trump. I think you just told me you just stepped out of a briefing and you look like you've aged 46 years.
That's right. I was 19 until this guy became president. Now look at me. I'm falling apart. I'm telling you. The reason why I had you here today, first, the big news. Joe Walsh, the former Tea Party congressman, has announced that he is now officially a Democrat. And I told you that before we started. And you've spoken often about communication and what the Democratic Party needs to do to move forward. Now, Joe is and I did invite him last minute if he's available. Maybe he'll join us. But the thing that Joe talks about is the need to include as many people as possible in the Democratic message, and there are those in the Democratic Party who don't agree with that. You've got Bernie and AOC have been on a tour, cancel the oligarchs tour, and then there are the others who say no, we just need to be progressive and find progressive candidates. You've got David Hogg, who's wants to primary incumbents, Democratic incumbents for younger people. So let's start with all of that. Do
Yeah.
you think there is a place for Joe in the Democratic Party?
So, politics 101 is you want to increase the pie and bring on as many people as possible because the more people means more voters, right? So
Makes
that's
sense to me.
yeah. So that's number one. However, the question then becomes is what do you sacrifice and who do you sacrifice to bring on as many people? Are you sacrificing your ethics, your values, your message, and are you sacrificing your base? Now, this is the problem with the Democratic Party that we saw in 2024. And what I've said, Brian, is the Democratic Party hates its own shadow because its shadow is black. The Democratic Party, specifically the Democratic establishment, would want nothing more than to trade its base, which, let's be honest, Brian, is who shows up? Black women, black folks, people of color. Then for this guy I call Chet. Chet is this mythical Rust Belt voter who drinks real coffee in the real cafe with wearing a MAGA hat. That's the guy that they want. Oh, how they'll give their soul for Chet. Oh, what Elisa Slotkin and Hakeem Jeffries and Chuck Schumer wouldn't give for Chet. And I keep telling them, Chet's not into you. Maybe you'll get one Chet. Maybe you'll get like a Chet from Idaho. But overwhelmingly for the past 10 years, Brian, Chet has told you that you're a pedophile, that you are a rapist, that you're part of the deep state. You know who's into you? Latoya. You know who's into you? Jose. You know who's into you? Brian Karam, son of Lebanese immigrants. You know who's into you? Like a Wajad. It ain't perfect, but these are the people who show up for you. So, are you willing to give up your base to court this mythical Chet, right? And what we saw in the 2024 election, and I think this was a mistake, is during the second half of Kamala Harris's campaign, once she got the corporate consultants, Brian, what happened? The populist agenda, that messaging was blunted. Tim Walz was neutered, and now Tim Walz is openly saying, I made a mistake. I was neutered. I should have fought harder, right? They went for at the DNC, Brian. They could have had just have a Palestinian speaker speak next to these amazing parents of the Israeli hostage who unfortunately was later killed, echoing the same message and then holding hands. Wouldn't that have been amazing? Literally, Brian, the lowest bar on earth. And what did the DNC say? No. Instead, we're going to give you Leon Panetta and a whole bunch of never Trump Republicans, which is fine. But if you center the never Trump Republicans above your own base, are you going to rally the base? And the answer is no. And what happened, Brian? People stayed home. And so what we need, I think, is a robust Democratic Party that leans in hard to the populist message. And I'll tell you this, you think I'm crazy here. There are people who voted for Donald Trump in 2024 and AOC. Now, investigate that. How the hell could people vote for AOC locally, for the House, and then for Donald Trump nationally? Because Donald Trump and AOC have tapped into something, even Bernie and others. Anti-establishment. The system isn't working, right?
Well,
The system is
isn't working.
the system isn't working. It's a populism. The difference is Donald, as you know, is a bullshit con artist. He is part and parcel of the
No,
1%.
Johnny's so honest about everything. He's never lied to us ever. Golly
Oh, okay,
gee.
forget the. Okay, suppose you're listening and you're
Well,
on
wait,
the fence.
but let me
He's
be serious.
Mar-a-Lago, born to millions, right?
It,
Lived in Trump Towers. But what did he do, Brian? He sold a populist message. Who sells a populist message and is authentic? AOC, Bernie. So if you want to give the big picture tent, you go off that populist. Even Joe Rogan, right? You know, he praised Joe Rogan. Joe Rogan was at the Trump inauguration. Who did Joe Rogan support before Donald Trump? Bernie Sanders. So there's something there. But
so
corporate Democrats aren't going to jump on it. And that's why we're screwed.
so is there a place for Joe Walsh in the Democratic Party?
Look, I am not willing to sacrifice winning because so much is at stake to placate the grievance of a Joe Walsh or a Liz
He's
Cheney,
not
right?
asking you to placate. He says he's done things wrong, that he was narrow-minded in the past, but he is conservative and does agree with Second Amendment rights and believes in justice for all and doesn't believe that Donald Trump follows the Constitution, and he just wants to be part of the big
Welcome,
tent of the Democratic Party.
welcome. But you have to realize if you're part of this party is not going to give up on Palestinian rights, Joe. This party is going to go after billionaires. This party is going to talk about taxing the rich. This party is
Yeah,
fine.
I think that there are plenty of Trumpers who would agree with those statements. I mean, individually.
Absolutely. And the
But
way you
to
get
your
them,
point,
Brian,
to
go
your
ahead. Go ahead.
point, yeah, but to your point, it's the populist part of it. What I find is that it was that advice that Donald Trump gave in the White House the other day. He says, "How do you clean up the Democratic Party?" You know, and then he listed a whole bunch of grievances about men playing, beating women in women's sports and transgender all the time and a bunch of stuff like that. That he said was, that made the Democratic Party horrible, and he's convinced people that that stances that the Democratic Party take, they don't actually take them, but he's
Absolutely.
convinced them that that's what it is. So what to Joe's point, he wants the art of half a loaf brought back. I may not get all that I want. You may not get all that you want, but politics is a way to solve the problems, not create them. And so
I agree with you, but the thing is this: two
I'm
things.
just asking if you agree with him.
Two things, and I don't know. I haven't talked to Joe in a little bit, so I don't want to put words in his mouth. But it's give and take. I'm not going to agree with everything. Joe's not going to agree with everything with the Democratic Party, right? But I think you and I both agree, Brian, that if it's lesser of two evils, there's no comparison. What I don't want to be, what I don't want to see, and this is what always happens, and I go back full circle to the base. The base is people of color. What often happens is people of color in the marginalized communities get thrown under the bus to win over these disaffected voters who are sold this hateful lie, right? This time it was transgender. Back in the day, it was Muslims and Arabs. It was Willie Horton. It was the welfare queen, right? And what you see Democrats do is always double down. We're tough on crime. No, you're right. We're not woke. F that, right? And then you see the Andy Bashir model, going back to your beloved home state, right? Andy Bashir, white man, conservative, Christian, Democratic governor of a Republican state, goes out in the New York Times after the election and does what? Does not throw the LGBTQ under the bus, does not throw abortion rights under the bus. Brian, you tell him what he did.
Well, he spoke to what we all need to speak about. I don't know what you're speaking about specifically, but what he did say was, and what he has always said, is that we have to find a way together. We're all in this together.
There you go. So him, Mallory McMorrow from Michigan did the same thing. Tim Waltz, this is Pride Month, did the same thing. All white folks who have a large part of their base that is like, center left, blue collar Democrats, also some Republicans. So can you craft a message without throwing the most vulnerable under the bus, which is what Donald Trump and Republicans want to do because they always do the culture war. They spent over $200 million attacking trans people, right?
Right.
And it was very effective, Brian. It was very effective. And like you said, Kamala Harris, there was no trans speakers at the DNC. She didn't mention the word, she didn't do pronouns. She didn't say Latinx. It's all bullshit culture war. So the way to cut through that is this race class narrative that I think leans in hard to this populism. And the message that I think that will unite the Joe Walshes, the me, the Reed Galens, the you, other people, and we'll get a whole bunch of folks, let's be honest, from our communities, right? Because if we should be really honest with our communities, Muslim and Arab communities, Christian or Muslim, there are a lot of folks who will vote Democrat, who are progressive, but they're like, LGBTQ stuff, it's a little too much for me. So can you give them space to say, okay, I might not agree with everything, but onto you, your way, and onto me, mine, but we should all have health care. And that's where I think what Joe might agree with me on, and some people say is within some progressive activists, right? And I'll also be honest and share the critique. Within some, not talking about the Democrat, within some progressive activists, this type of hardcore language policing and tone policing, and you have to have like everything correct. Republicans are the same way with MAGA, right? You have to give people space to be like, I'm religious. I don't believe in gay marriage, but you have a right to get married if in a gay marriage, you know?
Yeah. To your point, it's like Dave Chappelle said, to what point am I responsible for your thoughts? I have mine, you have yours. So how am I responsible for the way you see the world? But to your point, it was Trump who's taking advantage of this. Now,
absolutely.
All right, so here's what he said. I can tell you what they did wrong. I can tell you every one of their programs. Men playing in women's sports. I would say that's not a winner. When they say transgender for everybody, I think that's not a winner. When they say open borders so the entire world's population of criminals can pour into our borders, that's not a winner. Well, of course none of those are winners, but none of those are actual policies of the Democratic Party. But he is able to convince people that they are because he gets people worked up, and the whole DEI thing has people going nuts. And there are people that would vote Democrat, but they think that what's going to happen is that when Donald Trump said equal pay, equal rights in his executive order, he said, we're a meritocracy. We should be the best person for the job. Well, hell, everybody on the planet would probably agree with that. The difference is with DEI, they just want people to be included in the process.
There you go.
Other than white men. So
that's a failure of, and I think you'll agree with me, the failure of corporate media and Democrats to really explain the situation. Corporate media and Democrats parroting bad faith, because these are bad faith bullshit right-wing talking points, right?
There are people on the far left who will validate it by saying, "Hey, listen, I agree. No white people." I mean, that's
and so what happens is with both sides, which you and I completely disagree with, a Jake Tapper will take some far left, I don't know, activist who does not represent the Democratic Party, their majority, and says, look, both sides are extreme. No, you have like this far left activist on one side, and you have freaking Donald Trump, the president, who promoted a QAnon conspiracy on Saturday night about Joe Biden being a robot. It ain't even close, folks, right? And that's the problem of the failure of corporate media with the both sides framing, especially when we see fascism, is the Overton window shifts to the right. And these bad faith right-wing talking points.
Scott Jennings on too on CNN.
You see, that's what I'm saying. It's bad faith.
Balance.
Well, the balance. Alyssa Slotkin, the centrist Democrat from Michigan, repeating these bad faith right-wing talking points. We have to do the war on the weak and woke. What do you mean by that? Define it, right? Why are you giving into bad faith manufactured right-wing language that is used to divide us around race, gender, sexuality, when Democrats aren't doing that? It's the culture war. It's a Southern strategy on steroids. In the past, it was black people. It's always black people, right? Welfare queens. It's been Arabs. It's been Muslims, Sharia, all bullshit. And this year, it was transgender, where they're literally now, Brian, more anti-transgender bills than transgender athletes in America. The same thing happened in Sharia.
More anti-transgender bills than transgender people.
Exactly, right. And how many transgender people were there at the DNC? Zero. So you have to have a fighter who aggressively calls out the bullshit, but punches a bully in the face.
I agree with that, but isn't that the Democrats' fault? Isn't that what they
I absolutely agree with you. Okay. Like, instead of cowering, say, what the F are you talking about? Transgender people, there's only 1%, and they're really good soldiers. And in your hatefulness, You removed them, and you removed women, and you removed black people, and now you have incompetent idiots like Pete Hegseth who friggin' are sharing our military plans on Signal. And Donald Trump, according to Tulsi Gabbard, this leak that came out yesterday, I'm sure you saw this 2 days ago, you need Fox style briefings because you don't, you need someone like, it's like,
I know
it's like when that lady last
enough
week.
people from Fox News working for him. It should be easy.
But Brian, it's like, look, it's very basic stuff. But if you only had competent people, like I'll give you an example. A couple of days ago, and I knew you'll like this. It was a woman. Of course, it was a woman. I think she was from MSNBC. I don't know. Don't quote me on that part. She asked him, "What do you make of Wall Street men calling you taco?" And he lost his mind.
Yeah.
So you need people just to do basic, right? Like, Brian, follow-ups, double down. What do you mean by that? Where's the proof?
You know me. I've said all of that, I've said it early and often. I think that we've done a poor job, but I also wonder, because here's the thing. I talk to a lot of, I have in-laws and of course relatives, some of whom are Trumpers, and so you sit there and you talk to them for a while, and they go, I would be willing to vote for, I don't like Donald Trump, but he makes me feel more comfortable than anybody on the left. And I go, well, they're not even that far on the left. So to me, it boils down to a huge amount of miscommunication or non-communication. And you speak about black women being the Democratic Party. Well, that scares a lot of black men that I've talked to, and they didn't vote for Kamala Harris because they were afraid of that. So there's this whole, and also to your point, it's the Andy Bashirs, Chris Murphys, some of those people who are going to be able to speak better. But how willing would the Democratic Party be to accept them because they are white male?
I think, look, who voted for Joe Biden? Black women, black folks, right? Who, you know why? Because
and moderates and some conservatives.
You know why? Because black voters in particular have always had to be strategic. So let me give you the 2020 election. It was between two old white men, Joe Biden and Bernie Sanders. And we're in Virginia, right? And it was the primaries. And they were kind of neck and neck. Yeah, it was kind of neck and neck, but Joe Biden was surging because of Clyburn. And Clyburn and black voters are like, which white guy will other white people vote for? Biden. So they went in with Biden. And so in Virginia, most of us were undecided and we're like, okay, is everyone voting for Biden? So be it. So people of color have always been very strategic. There's only been one black president, the only one person of color president in our entire history. That was Barack Obama. Now, why did Barack Obama win? Is because of the utter failure.
Every president has had a white mother. I don't care.
Yeah, there you go. Biracial, right? But the reason why people forget why Barack Obama won was because of the utter failure of the Bush administration, the war on terror, Katrina, and the 2008 economic crisis. And people were so fed up, even people who said they'll never vote for a black person, they said, you know what? We like what this guy's selling, this message of hope and change. So you need a story, right? And you need a better story. And yes, it is the fault of Democrats that they have been unable to. Even now, I was just talking to someone, Gil Duran. I was just talking to him. He's a journalist. Okay, look at the failure of Democrats. Brian, you literally have a gift from the heavens where Joni Ernst openly tells her base, right? When they asked her about cuts to Medicaid and SNAP, she said,
everybody dies.
well, we all gotta die. And then the next day, she doubles down on the cruelty, makes a troll video while going through a cemetery and says, if you want eternal life, accept Jesus. Brian, is that not a political gold mine for Democrats? What have they done with it?
Of course it is. It's the Ebenezer Scrooge part of the Republican Party going, let them die and clear out the surplus population. Jesus, just put Joni Ernst next to Ebenezer Scrooge and you got it. But the point is they had that to me, Biden had that perfect thing with the infrastructure bill. Donald Trump, for 200 weeks, told me that it was infrastructure week in the United States, and he did jack shit. Not a thing. Donald Trump leaves. Joe Biden comes in. Within a year, he has passed $1 trillion infrastructure bill that, by the way, is bipartisan. Bipartisan infrastructure bill. Now, to me, that and all the economic indicators seem to indicate that we didn't go into a recession coming out of COVID because of that. It put people back to work.
Yep.
Stuff,
But
and
it
by the
doesn't
way,
matter. This is a messaging problem.
this is
You know
what
what?
I'm talking about. To that point, the Democrats had that, and I remember walking into the White House and saying, "Why aren't you talking about this?" And they said, "Well, we've already talked about it once. Let's move on." I'm going, "Don't you do not understand? Whatever oxygen you do not take in the room, Donald Trump will take. So you best be out there on your hands and knees barking."
And,
Then
look,
don't do it.
it's a messaging problem. There's several things. It's a messaging problem. Steve Bannon said 10 years ago, our enemy, he's talking about MAGA, our enemy is not the Democrats, it's the media. He understood it, right? How did Donald Trump in part win? Through YouTube, social media. They did what Obama did in 2008, right? They captured eyeballs vis-a-vis podcasts and YouTube, and they met people where they are and they Trojan horsed it, right? Whereas Democrats are trying to control from the top down, and it doesn't work. Also, what happened is misinformation, lies, conspiracy theories. People who had correct information about the economy, about inflation, about immigration. You know who they voted for? Kamala Harris. People who had incorrect information about all these things voted for Donald Trump, right? And then finally,
No doubt.
you know that they already did this analysis, this audit.
Well established.
Yeah, that they did this audit, and then finally, let's be honest, Brian. If you look at the polls, who do the people want? They want a fighter. They want someone willing to fight, right? That's all they want. They said, "Give me a fighter." And so why this is why the fighting oligarchy tour is capturing a lot of eyeballs. Oh, you're naming the villain, you're giving me a hero, and you're giving me like a solution. The 1% versus the 99%, the people have to rally, right? The Democratic Party is not fighting. Is Chuck Schumer a fighter, Brian?
No, don't even get me started. But the question is do they in their fight, if they find the proper front man, if they couldn't put the right person in the ring to fight, do they fight, and do they include people that aren't progressive? Do they include people who say, "Listen, I want to I want to vote Democratic, but I don't want a woman running the party," or I don't want Donald Trump, I don't want the Republicans, but I do want gun rights. Is there any of that? Is there room for any of those people, in the Republican Party? And how do you let them know that just because I disagree with you on one, issue, we agree on 99 others?
I think yes, because politics is all about addition. And the way you can get as many people as possible, and what the polls show, and I think just common sense and seeing where the country is going to go in the next 2 years, is overwhelming majority of people, Brian, no longer have faith in the institutions. They see the institutions as ossified, as corrupt, as architectures of
That way,
yeah,
and the press,
and
and yeah,
they all see
all of
the
it.
establishment as being against them, as being run by the rich for the rich, and the poor are getting poorer. So you can unite as many of these people as possible. You won't get everyone, but you can get a whole bunch of folks from the left to the right. You know who's your real enemy? It isn't that migrant worker. It isn't that kid whose pronouns you don't like. It isn't Brian. It isn't Watch. You know the real enemy? It's that mother effer, freaking Elon Musk. And
Yeah.
it's that dude living in Mar-a-Lago, the billionaire. And it's Howard Lutnick. And it's friggin' like Peter Thiel.
Jeff
Why the
Bezos.
F are these billionaires getting tax cuts while your mom is dying because she can't afford Medicaid? Is
Right.
that really, and you now give them a populist, bold, the 99% versus the 1%, the many versus the few elitists narrative, and you say, you know what? I don't care if you have guns. I don't care if you're trans. I don't care if you're atheist. I don't care if you're Christian. But all of us deserve to have health care, Medicaid, Social Security. F these rich mother effers. Let's bum rush it,
Well,
right?
yeah, that would be really. And to your point, I love the idea. I mean, you got in the breakup meeting in the Oval Office, but as the divorce is signed away between Donald Trump and Elon Tusk, Elon comes out and says, "Well, we may have found as much as $200 billion." Well, they had promised trillions, right? But now it's down to 200 million, and most people think that it's merely a bunch of people that they fired and are going to have to be brought back,
Yep.
like to NOAA and the National Weather Service, and I don't know, air traffic controllers, you putz, you. And so those will come back, and maybe less than a billion. Discretionary spending, by the way, was they always targeted between maybe 100 billion and 150 billion as being able to be cut. Now, to put that in perspective, look at it this way. Elon Musk could pay that out of his own pocket
Yep.
and still be the richest man on the planet by $100 billion. If
Yep.
he were to pay 200, he'd still be the richest billionaire on the planet, richest man on the planet by $28 billion, more than the second guy who I believe is Zuckerberg. If you put Zuckerberg and Elon Musk along with Jeff Bezos, the three richest people on the planet, if they were to contribute $500 billion to this, to what, education, healthcare, etc. in the United States, they would still, among the three of them, have more than $500 billion. That's the problem.
And I think the more people know this, the more people are figuring it out, right? Especially with this Joni Ernst quote. It reminds me of the 47% clip that came out. You and I are old enough, 2012, when Mitt Romney said, there was this video, folks, that Mother Jones got during the 2012 election where Mitt Romney, the moderate Republican, openly said that 47% of this country are freeloaders. That's what they think. They've always thought this. But now they've like supercharged the eugenics cruelty and social Darwinism and openly telling you this. And right, that was disastrous for Mitt Romney then.
The freeloaders are the billionaires. In this drive, in this zeal to get rid of hardworking immigrants in the United States, how many of those who hire those immigrants have been prosecuted?
Yep.
How many of them? Now, the Simpson-Mazzoli Act, which was the piece of legislation that first brought me to D.C. to cover the president during the Reagan era, was passed in 1985. Until 1985, it was illegal to come into the U.S., but not illegal to hire illegal immigrants. The Simpson-Mazzoli Act passed in 85, made it illegal to hire illegal immigrants. And since then, how many of these large companies have been prosecuted? Zero.
Yep. And so it's one of those situations. Look, even on immigration, Brian, and you and me, I guess, are storytellers, writers. So we know the power of the story. Everyone says, Democrats, they'll keep losing on immigration. Let me flip that on its head for a second. Senator Van Hollen, from Maryland, white man, middle-aged white man, right? Decided he would be the only person who would go to a CCOT, this gulag in El Salvador, where all these innocent brown men without due process were literally kidnapped and deported to, because Abrego Kilmar Garcia is from Maryland. So a whole bunch of Democrats should have joined him, but he went by himself. He decided to stay there until he got proof of life of Abrego Kilmar Garcia. It was in the news. What happened? As a result of Abrego Kilmar Garcia's story being in the news and corporate media being forced to cover it, and then as Trump officials to literally rationalize why they have sent a man that they have admitted was innocently sent to die essentially in a foreign gulag. Now Donald Trump is negative double digits on Abrego Kilmar Garcia. So it just goes to show you, if Democrats fight and message properly on an issue that they always thought they were, we're going to, that's why they start off, we're going to lose on immigration, we're going to lose on immigration, we're going to see a soft on crime, let's just vote with the Lincoln Riley Act, let's agree with whatever Republicans say. Chris Van Hollen said, let me try something else. Chris Van Hollen did it, and now as a result, this middle-aged white guy from Maryland, his stock has risen, and now he has thrown his hat in the ring as a potential 2028 presidential candidate. It's a great example. A fighter who leads by values, who's willing to tell a story, right? And people are like, this is unfair, this is indecent, we want safe borders, but not like this. And then you saw the case of Rameza Ostrich literally being kidnapped in the middle of the street by masked ICE agents simply for writing an article. And now you got Bill Kristol, friggin' neocon warhawk, going on CNN saying, yeah, maybe we should abolish ICE. So, don't be afraid to fight. That's what I'm saying, damn it. What are your values? What do you stand for?
You got to lose at this
What do you got to lose? You're hated.
You've already lost your rights. You might as well give it a shot, you big bunch of I'm not going to go.
No, you should say that. Look at Hakeem Jeffries. You see Hakeem Jeffries, it was 2 days ago, Dana Bash was asking him, like, Representative Nadler's aide was friggin' manhandled by ICE. What do you all plan to do? We will respond at a time and place of our choosing, and no one can tell us what we'll do, when we'll do it. And Dana goes, what does that mean?
Yeah. That's what the hell are you talking about? That's the whole problem. See, but you point out so to circle back around, first of all, you do point out what we've talked about before, and that is messaging. The press will be there if the message is there. And so you've got a fighter, you've got a well-made story. Here's a guy fighting against the system. By the way, he's a U.S. senator. He shows up, man. That's the kind of thing that the media eats up. It's easy, it's dramatic, and by God, there's video. So we're there with spades. I mean, we're there. So that's we'll dig the hole. So as long as we can cover it. But the question is, does the messaging? How do you, I mean, for people like Joe Walsh, and for people who think that the far left, the extreme left, the extremely woke, who are always concentrating on pronouns instead of all the other stuff that matters, that they're dragging the Democratic Party down. How does the Democratic Party muzzle that, or do they? Should they?
I don't think they should muzzle it. You can't. What you do is you take the Joe Walshes, you take the gun owning MAGA guy who's sick and tired of Trump because he realized he was lied to. You take the blue haired college kid with different pronouns, and you say, okay, you're all Americans. We don't agree with each other, but that's fine. But you all deserve to live with peace and security, right? And I might not agree with you, but that's okay. That's what happens in a free country.
Democrats doing that?
No. See, that what they're doing is you got the Carvils who say play possum and don't fight. You got the Lisa Slotkins copying the language of the right wing. And then you know what I do see though is the AOCs and the Bernies actually what they're doing. It's smart because progressives realize you need coalition. What they're doing is they're getting a little bit more skilled in advance. So they're not talking about Latinx or pronouns or this or that. You know what they're doing? Let's unite people around the 1% versus the 99%. Now, that's why I like the fighting oligarchy, which, by the way, struck a nerve, folks. It struck a nerve. You know, they went to these red states and they got all these workers and they're like, yeah, the oligarchs. Yeah, these friggin' rich mother effers. Yeah, I like this, right? So I think nothing's perfect, Brian, but I think, now whether or not AOC is the messenger or is there someone else, whoever is a fighter, number one, willing to literally punch a bully in the face. That's number one. That's what you keep seeing in the polls. We want a fighter, a fighter, a fighter. Number one. And then who has the best story that can get as many people as possible? It's not going to be perfect, but I think that story of the 99% versus the 1%. They are, even Mary Antoinette said, let them have cake. These mother effers are so greedy, they won't even give us crumbs. You don't believe me? Play Joni Ernst. Play Donald Trump being Ebenezer Scrooge saying, the girls need more than $2. I don't think so. Give your girls only $2. I'm going to get a luxury jet.
This is the best. No one has ever come up with. This is like our country has never seen before. My ideas are the best. $2.
Yeah. I mean, but even many people are like, what? Like, that's just beyond cruel, right? Like, because we all got kids. I got 2 daughters. So as this mother effer gets $400 million from crypto and has everyone knows this and has a plane, he's telling me that I can only give my daughter $2 and I should just suck it up. And my mom should suck it up and live a month without Social Security. That's what Lutnick said.
And die.
Yeah, and basically what now they're saying is, well, you're going to die. And not me, though. I'm going to be fine because I have health care and I have stock options and Joni Ernst has 7 figures. But you're going to die. So, I think, Brian, there's something about most Americans, as we've seen, they get radicalized. We have the attention span of gnats. As people, look, you can bullshit them about transgender. You can bullshit them about immigrants. But at the end of the day, it's very hard to bullshit people about what's in their wallet. It's very hard. People know. And then after a while, people say, I have less money now than I had before. I don't have Medicaid. I don't have Social Security. I don't have SNAP benefits. Things are worse. Mother effer, you lied to me. And you and I are old enough, Brian, that it took about 5 years for Americans to turn on George W. Bush. It took a long time.
The economy, stupid. That's
but then they turned.
Yeah, and that was Carville at his best. He got Clinton to go, it's about the economy, stupid, and then people were going, yeah, God damn it, yeah. I mean, then you have Donald Trump coming out the other day in the Oval Office. He called it a press conference, and it wasn't. It was a press availability for his handpicked pool, and he came out and said, look, things are getting better. Gas is $1.99 a gallon. Everybody's doing a lot better. I haven't seen gas at $1.99 a gallon. According to government stats, the average, if you average it out all across the country, it's $3.16. The cheapest is in Mississippi, where it's $2.66. Nowhere is it $1.99. So I don't think his BS sells. The question is, can the Democrats get back because all right, David Hogg, who wants to primary Democrats because he wants younger people in. Does that work? Is that selling the message?
I think it might. You know what David Hogg is doing? I'm not pro Hogg or anti Hogg, but look at the venom. What Hogg is saying is the following. He's tapping into something. These Democrats are literally dying in office, Brian. They're literally dying in office, right? So he says, okay, if you're not going to, yeah, if you're not going to move, I'm going to primary you. And a lot of people are like, yes, we need a. What the Democratic Party is witnessing, right, which is terrifying the establishment, which they refuse to confront, is what we saw happen with the Republican Party in 2010 and 2012. Remember Eric Cantor? You and I have the old memory. We have the gray hairs. Eric Cantor, he wrote a book. He was on the cover. It was him and McCarthy and Paul Ryan. They were the future of the Republican Party. All of them now are gone. Eric Cantor was going to be, the Jewish American Republican guy who's going to be sold to the mainstream. Guess what? The Republican base had other ideas. The Republican base said, nah, David Brett, a total freak Tea Party guy, is going to unseat you. And guess what, Republican establishment? We're going to reject what you're selling us. That's what's happening now. There's a culling. But this is like that scene, that famous quote from Charlton Heston, you have to pry this gun from my cold, dead hand. That NRA speech. You literally have Jerry Connolly, God bless.
Get your hands off of me, you damn dirty ape.
That too, from Planet of the Apes. But you got Jerry Connolly. Listen, folks, just sit with this for a second. 4 months ago, Jerry Connolly, God bless him, God rest his soul, was a great representative. Jerry Connolly was 73 years old. Jerry Connolly told people he had cancer. Jerry Connolly said, you know what? I want to be the head of the oversight committee. There was another Democrat who threw her hat in the ring. You know what her name was? AOC.
Yeah.
Jerry Connolly has about 4,000 people on Instagram when I checked. AOC has like millions. So Nancy Pelosi, you can't make this shit up, from her hospital bed, rallied votes for Jerry Connolly because you know what? He earned it. Jerry Connolly, 4 months later, passed away at the age of 74 due to cancer. They could have had AOC. You know who they could have had the head of communications? Jasmine Crockett. She threw her hat in the ring. When they look at these, the Democrats who are well-liked, she actually is one of the 5 people with positive ratings. You know who they gave it to instead, Brian? Tell them.
Yeah, well, but all of that, the point is that their fear is that if you do this, that you will, if you primary them, that you're going to upset the apple cart to such a point that a Republican will win that district because the Democrats are fighting among themselves.
Brian, the Democratic Party has a favorability rating of 29%, the lowest since 1994. Chuck Schumer in the leadership, Chuck Schumer is now barely double digits, has a favorability rating of 13.
He's barely sentient, but that's another story.
Did you see the video he did yesterday being more hawkish on Iran for the sake of Israel than even Trump? And people are like, what? Right? It's over. It's over.
Write him a stern letter.
It's over. Like, I want to tell these people, you're not made for this fight. You're not built for this moment. It's over. But they refuse to acknowledge that it's over.
So what you're saying is that what they fear, that Hogg and them fear because those people are in office. They fear if they're not allowed to stay in office that they'll lose the seat.
Absolutely.
If you stay in office, we'll lose the seat.
I agree with the Hogg on this, right? I agree with the Hogg's perspective on this, that if you stay on the office and maintain the status quo, which is what they're doing, you will lose and drag the party down. What we need is fresh blood, new blood. That doesn't necessarily mean young, because Bernie's in his 80s, Van Hollen, I think, is in his 50s, right? You need a fighter. You need a fighter spirit. You need new type of blood who's willing to take on this moment and confront it head on. And that's okay. You've done your part. You can be a Yoda. You could be a Harry Reid. Step aside. And you know that quote that came from within the Democratic Party when Jerry Connolly died, I think it was in Axios. They quoted a Democrat unnamed who said, you don't have to die in office, you know.
You're not the Pope.
Yeah, like you don't have to die in office. Retire. Respect to Durbin. Durbin is 80 and he was going to run again, and he thought about it and he said, okay, I'll back down. So respect to him. So you need a new type of mindset, and Democrats, sometimes you just need a new face, not necessarily a young face, a new face, Brian. You know this.
Yes, and somebody who will. So as we wrap up, let me just go back to where we started. All that you're talking about to convince people, look, the bigger strategy here, or the thing that I often don't hear about, is all right. We hear about Democrats trying to attract the middle of the road Republicans. The middle of the road Republicans have abandoned the Republican Party because they're too far to the right for most people who are sentient, cognizant of reality, and don't believe in chemtrails, or the fact that or the fake fact that Joe Biden is a robot. I mean, so for them, you can appeal to them, but what about the overwhelming majority of people who say screw you to both parties and they're not voting? Because that is the real silent majority.
Absolutely. And so this is where I think this message of taking on the establishment. Like, look, this is what people want. Why are people voting?
Because those people think both parties are really corrupt.
Brian, most people do. Like, I know a lot of Democrats who voted because of the threat of Trump, and they're like, I don't want to vote for Kamala. Both parties suck, but lesser of two evils. So, let's be honest. And I did this post yesterday where there's a great photo. Democrat, there was a box next to it. Republican, there was a box next to it. Neither party, and that person checked that box and held that sign. How do you win over the disaffected voter? Most people don't vote. This is how you win them over. You give them a story. You give them a narrative worth fighting for. You cannot give them the status quo. The problem with Biden was, and he was a product of his age, he said restoration. And I said, this is why Biden was a one-term president, should have been a one-term president.
Yes.
People don't want restoration, Brian. They want reformation. And if you're not willing to have the guts to promise and fight for a change and reformation, then you're going to lose. Donald Trump sold a bullshit narrative of change. It was all about wealth transfer to him and his corrupt family and his friends. You need Democrats to finally challenge the corporate class, the billionaires, the money, and say, we're going to fight for the people. Whoever has the guts to do that, I think wins over the majority.
I think you're right. And I think if they do that properly and bring in some of the people that are right of center, left of center, and get those who are voting, not voting to vote. Yeah. I mean, that's a tall order, though. That's a tall order. And
it's but it's doable. You and I have lived through it.
It's doable, but will they do? I mean, I sat there as we finish. I will just say this. I testified before an FCC commissioner in Los Angeles recently, who was on a listening tour. She's one of the few Democrats, and she goes, free speech is under attack. We've got to do something about it. I go, no, you don't get it. We already lost free speech. I've been fighting this fight for 40 years. We'll stand up and fight, but you got to have our back. You and government have to do your fucking job, and they don't do it. And so you see a lot of people scared shitless that no matter who they put in, they're not going to do the job. So the person that the Democrats find, there are people that will vote for Donald Trump. How pathetic is it that there are people that feel don't really like him, but think he's the lesser of two evils?
But you know why, Brian?
In what universe is he the lesser of two evils? One where there's no morality.
Yeah, well, the cruelty, it shows the cruelty of America. But another thing is perception.
Yes, perception.
They see Republicans as alpha, as sharks. They get shit done. So look again. Of course, but it's so what I recommend is Democrats be fighters, be bold, go against the establishment, promise bold change on behalf of the majority, keep punching Republicans in the face. And people say it's impossible. I never thought in my lifetime, I would see a black man become president. Yeah. Obama said hope and change. And it just captured the zeitgeist. I think the zeitgeist will be captured by that one politician who is willing to have a populist message and take on the establishment, both within the Democrats and the Republicans, and take on the billionaire class. And that's how you win over enough people from the fringes, from the centers, and from the base to get the majority. I really believe that.
Well, and I think you look at some facts. Here's, as we close, look at this. This is important to me. When the Republican Party started in 1860, their very first president elected out of the gate is often regarded as one of, if not the best president in the history of the United States, Abraham Lincoln. Since then, they've only managed to place, I think it is, all right, while every Democratic president since Woodrow Wilson, with the exception of Jimmy Carter, and I think this is horrible, but has been placed in the top 20. Every Democratic president elected since Roosevelt, FDR, has placed in the top 10, with the exception of LBJ, who was at 11, and Bill Clinton at 19. So on the other hand, the Republicans started out with, the Democrats started out, they were losers. It was Jackson and Martin Van Buren, not exactly the best.
Oh, winner killers. Yeah.
So, and it took them 104 years to place a president in the top 10. The Republicans started out in the top 10, and they have gone from from Abraham Lincoln to Teddy Roosevelt to the party of Ronald Reagan to now the party of Trump. So they've gone from best to worst, while the Democrats have gone from worst to one of the best.
Yeah.
And so that tells you that if you're going to sit there and talk about the Republicans being effective, as you have said, they see them as fighters. They see them as effective. The reality is they're full of shit, because there is not one Republican president since Eisenhower. They say that Reagan was one of the top 10, but I don't buy that. He's a POS, and he's the architect of the Republican Party we have today.
Anytime we get an opportunity to crap on Reagan as a legacy, we should take it, Brian.
I'm always going to take it. I say he is the absolute worst Republican president ever, until every Republican president that followed him. He was simply the step down the ladder that began the fall. And now
he gave them a blueprint. He gave them the blueprint, and all this is Reaganomics, the assault on the workers, the move of wealth to the top, the dismantling of unions, the courting of white Christian nationalists, the attack on the media. It all traces back.
And he would not be allowed in the Republican Party today, because even that moron believed in a pathway to citizenship. Yeah. What?
He'd be too woke.
Yeah, yes, he's right. He's too woke because he believes people who breathe are human beings.
He used the word amnesty, and he had a global vision.
Yeah, and not so much today. So, Walsh, as we close, I know you've got to head out, but I plug whatever you want, brother. It's always a joy to have you.
No, man, that was fun. We could have gone for a while. I write for The Left Hook. It's thelefthook.substack.com. I'm a terrible capitalist. My immigrant parents are ashamed. I have kept zero paywalls. You pay what you can. I know things are tough, but I expect citizenry to be informed as we fight fascism. So if you can, just subscribe for free. If you have some money, it's really cheap, $5 a month. It goes a long way. I have 3 kids. It's The Left Hook on Substack. And I also co-host Democracy-ish with Daniel Moody every Monday and Friday at 12 p.m. Eastern Time. You can catch it on Daniel Moody's YouTube show. And then Brian and me often join our friend Mary Trump for the Nerd Avengers.
When she comes back, she just got back from Britain, I understand.
So next week, I think.
Yeah. So, and this is, I just love your pitch. I don't have a paywall either for all my stuff, and it is just $5 a month, and I have grandkids. So if you want to pitch in, they want more than $1 or $2. So and we all have bills to pay. So I appreciate you being here. The name of my Substack is Reporter's Notebook. And you can also catch me on Salon. This is Just Ask the Question. I want to thank everyone for joining us, and we'll catch you next time.